Which defense attorney is representing Aiden Hatcher?
That'll be Alex.
Okay. Do we need a breakout room for him?
No, we don't.
Okay. His parents are here and there's some MH stuff, so I think we may want to address that in a breakout. I didn't know if you were aware of any of that.
I wasn't. No. In that case, let's do a breakout.
Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Judge Lal, and are going to begin with our expedited accusation calendar with the State Court of Fulton County for today, January 15th, 2025. These are new misdemeanor cases, individuals who were recently arrested and booked at the Fulton County Jail. Soon thereafter, their cases were formally accused by the Solicitor General of Fulton County, who is the prosecutor for these cases. So this would be the defendant's first appearance before a judicial officer. Please remember that you have a right to remain silent. Anything that you say in open court, your statements can and will be used against you in the treatment of your case. You have a right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be appointed to represent you. Today, when I call the individual's case, I will let them know of what their new case number is. What are the charges brought against them? To appoint counsel where necessary and to also set a bond. Certain individuals may qualify for what we call a signature bond, in which you can be released on a bond without having to pay for it. However, you must comply with the conditions set forth for the bond. If you fail to comply, your signature bond can be revoked and amended to either a cash bond or a surety or good bond. For those who do not receive a signature bond, you will receive either a surety bond or a cash bond. In that particular case, you would have to pay for your bond either out of your own pocket or through a bonding company. Certain conditions may also attach to that bond. All right, who do we have in courtroom 2? Oh, what's the reset date, by the way?
January the 28th.
Okay. For those of you who receive a surety bond, a cash bond, or if you have other cases holding you at the jail, you will receive a new court date of January 28th at 9 a.m. This new court date will be also a virtual proceeding, so you would need to get a Zoom link in order to attend that particular proceeding. Okay, courtroom 2, I'm sorry, who do we have?
Before we start, add-on number 1, Mr. Williams, he's gonna have to be reset because he didn't have transportation over here from Cobb.
Okay, so his Zachary Williams will be reset to January 16th at 2 p.m.
And Your Honor, we need a breakout for position 4.
Is that who we are addressing right now?
No,
No.
This is number 1, Mr. Burley.
Okay. This is State versus Irvin Burley, accused of 3 counts of battery from December 22nd, 2024, in case number 25 CR 258Y. Mr. Burley, you've been advised of your rights, and your attorney is going to be Mr. Shatai. Do you see your attorney on the Zoom screen? Alex Shatai, if you could please wave. Can you see him? Okay, good. All right. And who's my pretrial officer? Is it Miss Jackson? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
All right. And what are the priors, if any, on Mr. Burley?
He has 33 cycles. The last arrest was February the 21st, 2024, out of Jacksonville, Florida, for a failure to comply. He does have felony convictions. There's a federal conviction in 2016 for a charge associated with the CWAC. And there was one in 2009 out of Texas for possession of marijuana, a felony. One in 2008 out of Texas for fraud. He does have misdemeanor convictions. One in 2016 out of Texas for driving while license suspended or revoked. One in 2015 out of Texas for criminal trespassing. Additional one in 2015 out of Texas for a DUI. One in 2014 out of Texas for possession of marijuana less than an ounce.
Oh, that's good. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Appreciate it. Thank you. Ms. Desiano, what is your recommendation?
Yes, Your Honor. Just to clarify, the arrest from February 2024 in Florida is a failure to register as related to the underlying CWAC.
Understood.
This case happened December 22nd at 789 Hammond Drive, which is the defendant's residence, or was at the time of this incident. He has a different address on his jailing screen. The victim is Ruth Monte. She had a visibly swollen left eye and dried blood on her inner mouth and visible bruising on her forearms and hands. She flagged down an officer on Glen Ridge Drive and said she had just been assaulted by the defendant at his residence. The victim said she went to the defendant's residence to get her phone, and from there he pulled her inside and began stomping on her, punching her, and hitting her with a broom. When the defendant went to the bathroom, the victim was able to escape, and when the defendant realized she left, he went downstairs and tried to convince her not to call the police as she was getting into her vehicle. The state's requesting a $3,000 surety, Your Honor, $1,000 each count. No contact with Ms. Monte. We've not been in touch with her today. No weapons, drugs, or alcohol. His address on his jailing screen, Your Honor, is a Macon address. He has a very recent arrest from Florida, and then the rest of his history, he has 30 cycles out of Texas. So there's an argument he doesn't have deep ties here. And of course, given his history, there's a risk of reoffense. Nothing further. If you could sound for Ms. Monte, thank you.
Ms. Monte, Ruth Monte, if you want to address the proceedings, please unmute and start your video. Okay, Mr. Chatay?
Yes, Your Honor. My client is 32. He has been a Georgia resident for the past 3 years, is my understanding. He not only graduated from high school, but attended a nursing program for 2 years at Houston Community College, and he has been working as a barber for the past year. Moreover, he sends money to his two daughters, or he provides for his two daughters and provides financial support. One daughter is 16, the other is 12, and he has a third child on the way. Given the facts, Your Honor, we ask for the lowest available bond that is reasonably necessary for his case.
Okay. Mr. Burley, your bond is going to be $1,000 on each count. That's a $3,000 surety bond. No further contact with Ruth Monte. And if she lives at the premises, then you need to stay away from 789 Hammond Drive in Sandy Springs. Otherwise, you're allowed a one-time visit to that location with a police officer to verify that she does not live there. And if she doesn't live there, then you can return to the premises. Otherwise, you'll need to stay away from that location and update the court with your new address within 30 days of being released. No illegal drugs, no alcohol, no weapons. Your next court date is January 28th. Thank you.
Next, we have position number 3, Mr. Griggs.
Gregory Griggs is case 25 CR 255E, accused of 3 counts of simple battery family violence from January 5th, 2025. Mr. Griggs, you've been advised of your rights and your attorney is Mr. Chatay. Any priors, Ms. Jackson?
He has 3 cycles. The last arrest was October the 7th, 2014. And that was in Gwinnett County for a probation violation. He has 1 misdemeanor conviction that was in 2013 out of Gwinnett County for a DUI. It appears to meet the criteria for a UJR, a level 1, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Desiano?
Yes, Your Honor. This incident happened on January 5th at the Connie House Restaurant in Johns Creek, 10820 Abbott's Bridge Road. The victim is Karika Smith. She's the defendant's wife. There was an argument outside of the restaurant, and the defendant took both of his hands and pushed her from behind in the parking lot, causing her to fall. We spoke to the victim today. She also stated that during this argument, he later pushed her in the bushes and then struck her approximately 50 times, and her daughter actually had to break them up. And that's how the police were involved. She states that the defendant is her husband of 25 years. However, they have not lived together for the last 2 years. They do share 2 children, one of which is still a minor. She says that she was with the defendant picking up their daughter to get some food. The defendant was angry. She believes he was drinking earlier that day. She confirmed the events in the warrant, but did clarify what I just said about the other 2 incidents, and did say her daughter had to intervene. She states that the defendant has always been violent towards her, but she has been afraid to call the police. She's not had any contact with him since this incident. However, she's okay with no violent contact. And of course, given her statement, Your Honor, the state would object to any contact at this point. We're requesting an SOB through pretrial, no contact with Ms. Griggs, stay away from the Connie House Restaurant. And because even though they no longer live together but are co-parenting, we are also asking for him to enroll in TVIP, no weapons, drugs, or alcohol. And if you could sound for Ms. Griggs.
Ms. Kerika Griggs, if you're on Zoom, this is the time to unmute and start your video. All right, Mr. Chate, any response?
No response and no objection, Your Honor.
All right. On each count is going to be 1,500. That's going to be a 4,500 signature bond through pretrial services level 2. Mr. Griggs, you can sign up for your bond today, but you must you must report to pretrial services twice a month. No further contact with Kerika Griggs, and you're only allowed a third-party transfer of any minor children that you share with Ms. Griggs, which means that a third party must be involved in order for you to have visitation with the minor child or children that you share with Ms. Griggs. You are to have stays 200 yards away from Ms. Griggs and do not approach her in person, through phone, email, any kind of computer device, through a third party, and even on social media. You're also to stay away from her home in Lockmate Drive. I think it's in Sandy Springs or Peachtree Corners. In Peachtree Corners, Georgia. You're not to go to that location at all. Within 30 days of being released on your signature bond, you will enroll and complete a domestic violence intervention program. This is a series of 26 weekly classes, and you will attend and complete all classes without missing or skipping any of them. And within 15 days of being released, you will enroll in an alcohol and drug evaluation and submit to any treatment that's required. While this case is open and active, you're not to consume any illegal drugs and no alcoholic beverages. You will be subject to random screens by pretrial. Your next court date will be sent to your current address. Make sure that we have a valid and current mailing address. Mr. Chate, is it the Spalding Drive location?
That's the address I have.
Is that your current address, Mr. Griggs?
Yes, the Spalding locating 7742.
Well, within 30 days of being released, make sure that we have your current address. You can check that with the clerk's office. We will send you summons through your current address. If you don't receive it or you don't show up, a bench warrant can be issued for your arrest. Thank you.
Next, we have position number 4, Mr. Hatcher.
We need a breakout for him, Your Honor.
Right, we'll take it at the conclusion of the calendar.
Okay, so we'll do you like that.
Okay.
All right, we can go with position number 2, Mr. Fluland.
Oh, you have number 1? Oh, no problem. I'll wait for it. Is that ready to go? Okay. We have Keith Fluellen, case number 25CR254G, accused of battery, family violence, and criminal trespass from January 13th, 2025. Mr. Fluellen, you've been advised of your rights, and your attorney is Mr. Chate. Any priors, Ms. Jackson?
He has 3 cycles. The last arrest was July the 22nd, 2019, out of Cobb County for simple assault and theft by taking. He does have misdemeanor convictions. One in 2021 out of Cobb County for criminal trespassing. One in 2021 out of DeKalb County for disorderly conduct. He appears to meet the criteria for UJR level 1. Nothing in addition.
Ms. Desiano?
Yes, Your Honor. This incident happened on January 13th at 8060 Adair Lane in Sandy Springs, apartment 3414. Officers responded there regarding a domestic dispute, and they spoke with the victim, Miss Brittany McLean, upon arrival. She lives at the location and also shares a child with the defendant. She was seen banging on the door at the location. She was extremely emotional. The officer was having a hard time getting information out of her, and the defendant began yelling from the balcony of the apartment at the officer and just said they got into a verbal dispute at a nearby restaurant and were fighting in the car. He then said something that was very insulting to the victim, and she got so hysterical, the officer had to detain her in his patrol vehicle. And while she was being detained, the officer returned to speak to the defendant, who was no longer cooperative and yelling racial slurs at the officer. When the victim eventually calmed down, she did tell the officer that she left the apartment to put some things in her car. And when she went back upstairs, she found the defendant had locked her out and also taken her key off of her key ring. So she couldn't unlock the door. And she told the officer she was just trying to get their son and leave. And she didn't want the defendant to enter her apartment because she didn't feel safe with him being there. For her safety, the officer eventually transported her to the Sandy Springs headquarters. And once she arrived at headquarters, she opened up about what had really happened. When in better lighting, the officer could see that she had a visible injury under her left eye. She explained that the defendant threw an object at her prior to police arriving while in the apartment, while they were arguing inside. She did confirm that the defendant left the mark on her, but refused to go into detail about what had happened. We've been in touch with her today. She states they're in a relationship. They no longer live together. They share a child. She said the incident location is her residence. There was the argument at the restaurant and they came home in the car. She's now denying that the defendant threw an object at her. She's saying that she did, however, sustain an injury in the car on the way home, but wouldn't go into detail with us about what had happened. She states that she does not want any contact and would like for him to stay away from the residence and plans to file for a TPO. We're requesting a $2,500 surety bond, no contact, stay away, DVIP, no weapons, drugs, or alcohol. And at this point, the state would object to any third-party transfer, as it's our understanding the defendant's not legitimated. You can sound for Ms. McLean. Thank you.
Brittany McLean, if you want to address the court, you would need to unmute and start your video. Remove your hoodie.
Yes, Judge.
All right, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you provide will be the truth to the best of your knowledge?
I swear.
How many children do you share with Mr. Flewellen?
1,
How old?
5 months.
Okay. And are you both married?
No.
All right. And do you currently reside at the Adair Lane apartment complex?
Yes.
What's that called? The apartment complex?
Arium, Morgan Falls.
Repeat that.
Arium, ARIUM, Morgan Falls.
Okay. What would you like to tell us?
I just want to tell you in the court that the defendant, Keith Llewellyn, should be released if he can be released out on bond, and that he probably should have a signature bond, or if anything, I can just make sure that he's okay as far as getting released. He is also the caretaker of my child while I go to work. Therefore, I need him to be, I need help with my baby, and he's the person that I trust to help him with my baby, despite of the incident happened. I still trust him to take care of my child. And I have to work this week, so I kind of need to have that in place. I don't have any childcare or any like daycare for my child to go to. I'm not enrolled in anything.
Okay.
Therefore,
Thank you.
okay.
Mr. Shatang?
Yes, Your Honor. My client is 27. He's lived in Atlanta his entire life, so therefore it's likely he's not a flight risk. He's graduated from high school. He periodically volunteers for a community program, which I believe is called Keep North Fulton Beautiful. And as we just heard from Ms. McLean, she needs help with her 5-month-old child, and my client would be able to do that. Therefore, we ask this court to consider the possibility of a signature bond, but if the court is not inclined to do that, then we would ask for the lowest bond amount that is appropriate for this case.
Thank you. On the criminal trespass, it's going to be $1,500. On the battery, it's going to be $3,500. That's a $5,000 signature bond through pretrial services, level 2. Mr. Flewellen will report to pretrial services twice a month. He may be released on a signature bond, but he must comply with the following conditions. No further contact with Brittany McLean. He's to stay 200 yards away from Miss McLean and the minor child that he shares with her. He's not to communicate with her in any way, form, or manner, with the exception of whatever is obtained from a legitimation action. If he wishes to have any kind of joint visitation or custody with the child he shares with Miss McLean, he would need to file a separate legitimation action where he will obtain a court order setting forth the parameters for visitation, custody, and child support. He's to stay away from 8060 Adair Lane, apartment 3414, and the entire apartment complex, Arium Morgan Falls complex. He's not to be seen within 200 yards of that location. Within 30 days of being released, he will enroll and complete a domestic violence intervention program, and he will attend and complete all 26 weekly classes and present the certificate of completion to his pretrial officer. No illegal drugs, no alcoholic beverages, and no weapons and no firearms. Next court date will be sent to his current mailing address, which cannot be the Adair Lane location. So he'll need to make sure that within 30 days that he updates us with any changes to his current mailing address, or make sure that we have the current one. Thank you.
Next, we have position number 5, Mr. Henderson.
All right, number 5. This is Kieran Henderson, accused of 2 counts of battery from January 13th of this year under accusation 25 CR 257Y. Mr. Henderson, you've been advised of your rights, and your attorney is Mr. Chate. Any priors, Ms. Jackson?
Your Honor, he has 5 cycles. The last arrest was September the 10th, 2018 in Fulton County for driving without a valid license. He does have 1 misdemeanor conviction that was in 2019 out of Alpharetta, Georgia for a non-fingerprintable offense. He appears to meet the criteria for a UJR level 1.
Thank you. Ms. Desiano?
Yes, Your Honor. This incident happened on January 14th around midnight. Officers were dispatched to 2479 Peachtree Road, apartment 1316. The victim in this case is Jarrell Medley. He was visiting the defendant at his residence there. He stated he and the defendant were sitting on the couch watching TV and talking when all of a sudden the defendant started yelling and got irate and demanded that he leave. The victim refused to leave, and the defendant got in his face and started yelling and then tried to physically force him out the door. At that point, the victim pushed back and the two started a physical altercation. The victim had deep abrasions from being scratched and several deep bite marks on his arms. The officer spoke to the defendant, who admitted to trying to physically push the victim out of the residence. However, he denied biting him despite there being obvious bite marks all over the victim's body. We've been in touch with the victim today. He states that they were friends at the time of this incident. However, of course, they're no longer friends after this incident. They do not live together. The incident location is the defendant's residence. He confirmed the events in the warrant, and he would like no contact. We're requesting a $2,000 surety bond, Your Honor, no contact, and no weapons, drugs, or alcohol. In addition to his 2019 conviction, he does have 2 other violent arrests for battery, family violence, and aggravated assault in 2012 and 2015, respectively. The battery, family violence was dismissed. I don't know the disposition of the aggravated assault, and he does have a failure to appear from 2016. Nothing further.
Jarrell Medley, if you're on Zoom, if you want to address the court, this is the time to unmute. Okay. Mr. Chate, on each count, it's going to be $1,500. That's a $3,000 signature bond through pretrial services, level 1. No further contact with Jarrell Medley. no illegal drugs, alcohol, and weapons. He's not allowed to own or possess any firearms. And he's to complete 2 anger awareness classes with pretrial services. His next court date will be sent to his current address. Thank you.
We have position number 6, Mr. Levette.
This is State versus Ravian Levette, accused of reckless conduct and discharge of a firearm on the property of another from March 6th of 2024. Case number 25 CR 252E. Mr. Levette, you've been advised of your right to remain silent. Your attorney is Mr. Chate. And any priors, Ms. Jackson?
Your Honor, he does not have any prior adult arrests on file.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Desiano?
Yes, Your Honor, he was arrested at the same time as this incident on warrants for aggravated assault, willful obstruction, and armed robbery. He should have been on first appearance this morning. That's 25 PI 000342. And the juvenile arrest he was sentenced in 2022, which was also an aggravated assault, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, and a person under 18 in possession of a firearm. It looks like he was sentenced to 12 months probation in 2022 in juvenile court for that. This incident took place on March 6th, 2024 at the 7th Courts Apartments at 2800 MLK Junior Drive. Officers responded there to a person who was shot. Upon arrival, they made contact with the defendant, who had multiple gunshot wounds. The defendant said that he had been shot, but that he didn't know what happened or who had shot him, and he did not cooperate in the investigation. So the officers went and pulled the security footage at the location, and it showed the defendant going back and forth from his vehicle to a nearby apartment and eventually returning to his vehicle, being followed by 3 unknown people. There's an interaction that turns physical between the defendant and the others, during which point the defendant draws a firearm and discharges it towards the others. And there's gunfire that's exchanged between them with at least one of the other individuals. The group of 3 then flee on foot in separate directions. The defendant tosses his firearm on the ground at the apartment complex and then hides. He's eventually located by the 3 people and possibly shot another time. And sometime later, one of the other individuals collects the firearm that the defendant had discarded. When police responded, they were not at the same scene of the shooting. The defendant had walked some period of time, so they didn't see the firearm that had been left. And at no point, of course, did the defendant inform the officers that there was a stray firearm laying in the complex. Your Honor, of course, this defendant has violent history. As I've stated, he's a danger to the public. And the concern in this case in particular is that this happened in an apartment complex and near the apartments where, of course, a stray bullet could have struck any innocent bystander or a child. To the extent that the defense argues that this is self-defense, just remind the court that the defendant was the first to draw his firearm, and he was getting in his vehicle at the time this happened. And so he could have easily driven away to de-escalate to escape 3 people on foot. So with his history, Your Honor, and what happened here, the state's requesting a $20,000 surety bond, $10,000 on each count, a stay away from the apartment complex. We're asking for an ankle monitor and a 24-hour curfew with exceptions for work, medical, school, and court. No weapons, drugs, or alcohol.
Mr. Chate?
Yes, Your Honor. My client is a lifelong resident of the Atlanta area. He is 20 years old. Notwithstanding his history, Your Honor, it's my understanding that my client was shot in the altercation, so he has limited mobility and would not necessarily be a threat to the community given his current condition. We would be okay with a stay away order from the location. However, we would ask this court to consider lowering the bond amount to the lowest amount that's reasonable for this case.
On the reckless conduct is 2,000. On the discharge of a firearm is 1,500. His total bond is 3,500. It's a surety bond. No further contact, to stay away from the entire apartment complex of the incident location. No illegal drugs, no alcohol, and definitely no firearms. His next court date is going to be January 28th. Thank you.
Next, we have position number 7, Mr. Lloyd.
This is State versus Rayon Lloyd, accused of simple battery, family violence, 2 counts from January 14th, 2025. Mr. Lloyd, you've been advised of your right to remain silent, and your attorney is going to be Mr. McLean. Any prize, Ms. Jackson?
There are 5 cycles. The last arrest was December the 3rd, 2024 in Clayton County for criminal trespassing and battery family violence. There was no disposition for that arrest, and there are no convictions listed in the GCIC. It does appear to meet the criteria for UJR level 2. Nothing in addition.
Thank you. Ms. Allen, good afternoon. What's the recommendation?
Good afternoon. You did just hear the defendant is on bond out of Clayton County for a battery case, family violence. I've reached out to that jurisdiction to see the name of the victim. I haven't heard back yet. He has an open felony theft in Superior Court and is out on bond from January of 2024 on a UJR. And in 2019, he has a battery conviction in 21 CR 000997J. Simple battery against Amanda DeVoe. He was unsuccessfully terminated from probation. This is an incident from the 14th, so yesterday, Your Honor. At about 6 in the morning, police were called to 5557 Sturbridge Way. There, they spoke to the victim. Her name is Curriza Moore, and I'm going to spell that for you. Currisiah. She reported that she lives at the location with the defendant, who is her boyfriend. Police actually responded and they made contact with the defendant first. He'd been pepper sprayed and he reported that it was an accident. He sprayed himself in the face and he needed help. While police were on scene with him, they were told by dispatch that a female had actually been the 911 caller and reported that she'd sprayed the defendant after being assaulted. Shortly thereafter, the victim arrived on foot and explained to the police that she and the defendant had argued about how unclean the residence was. And during that argument, he assaulted her. He shoved her down on the ground and then struck her and ripped the necklace from her neck. And that she pepper sprayed him before fleeing on foot and calling police. We tried to reach out to the victim today. We got in touch with her mother and we'll continue to try to make contact in those efforts to offer her some resources. Based on the open case that he's out on bond for in this jurisdiction for felony theft, the open battery family violence in Clayton County, and the conviction in 2021 for his 2019 simple battery. We're asking for a $2,000 surety, Your Honor, to stay away from the location, 555 Sturbridge Way. No contact with the victim, Mrs. Moore, and no drugs, alcohol, or weapons. Thank you. And if you would sound for Mrs. Moore in case she was able to join us.
Ms. Carisha Moore, if you want to address the court, this would be the time to unmute and start your video. All right, Mr. McLean. Please unmute, Mr. McLean.
Thank you, Your Honor. My client, Mr. Lloyd, has been in Georgia for 7 years, which is a pretty good while. He is originally from South Carolina and graduated high school in Santee, South Carolina, at Lake Marion High School. He has worked as a cook at McDonald's for about a couple of years. He has worked at Shane's Rib Shack as a cook at the airport. And before that, he was doing stocking, the loading and unloading of trucks with food and other merchandise for various shops in the concourses. The arrest record was noted to the court. He has also worked at as a barback at the cigar place that specializes in cigars and is kind of a nightclub too. He's 29. We'd ask the court to consider a signature bond. If the court cannot give him a signature bond, we'd ask for a $1,000 surety bond.
It's going to be $1,000 on each count. That's a $2,000 surety bond. No further contact with Ms. Carisha Moore. If she's still living at the Sturbridge Way, he's to stay away from 5557 Sturbridge Way in South Fulton, Georgia. No illegal drugs, no alcohol, no weapons. And within 30 days of being released on bond, he must update the court with his new mailing address. Next court date is January 28th.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go with position number 9, Mr. Sanchez.
That was one where we had requested a interpreter.
All right. Do we have Ms. Champion or Mr. Jordan? Do we have an interpreter available?
Good afternoon, Judge Law. It's Miss Grace. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Ms. Grace. Yes.
We do have one, but she's at the court. I mean, excuse me, she's at the jail now, and she said she'll be signing on around 2:30. So I haven't seen her log in yet.
All right, we'll wait for her to log in. Do we have any other cases to address in the courtroom other than the breakouts?
Yes, we have position number 10, Mr. Usher.
Okay, we have 10 and 11, and then we have that one breakout we have to address.
Yo.
This is State versus Larry O'Keefe Usher, accused of stalking, family violence, and harassing communications from October 22nd, 2024. Accusation number is 25 CR 0253C. Mr. Usher, you've been advised of your right to remain silent, and your attorney will be Mr. McLean. Ms. Jackson, any priors with regards to Mr. Usher?
He has 9 cycles. The last arrest was November the 8th, 2013 out of Gwinnett County for a failure to appear. The underlying charge was not listed. He does have a misdemeanor sentence and a conviction. He received a nolo contendory sentence in 2009 out of Riverdale, Georgia for driving while license suspended or revoked. And there was a conviction in 2002 out of Clayton County for disorderly conduct. He appears to meet the criteria for UJR level 2.
Thank you. Ms. Allen?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is an incident that occurred October the 22nd, 2024. As a result of the incident, investigators submitted search warrants for phone records, and those were obtained and reviewed. The warrant was just obtained based on those records January the 8th. Police were called on the 22nd of October to 260 Pine Street. And there they met with the victim. Her name is Rosalind Moore, and her boyfriend at the time, Michael Waters. They were outside the residence of Mr. Waters and visibly upset. Mrs. Moore reported that the gentleman she'd been dating off and on for years and had broken up with was calling her repeatedly and sending her texts repeatedly during that day, and that he'd shown up outside where they were and met police and spoken to her boyfriend and herself, conveyed threats to them, and said that he'd put a tracker on her car. They were looking to see if they could locate a tracker, but were unable to. Police tried to assist. And I think the information is that there wasn't one eventually found, but I'm unsure. She used to live with this gentleman, the defendant, Mr. Usher. So officers took over the case and got a search warrant for the phone records. They saw information that showed he'd been using *67 multiple times, the phone number associated with the defendant, to conceal his identification as the caller. And between 2:30 a.m. and 5:40 p.m. on October the 22nd, he called her 70 times. She told him she did not want any contact and to leave her alone. And then he showed up outside and made verbal threats. That's when she called the police. We've spoken to Mrs. Moore today. She's requesting no contact. She reports that she and the defendant have been broken up for almost 2 years at this point. And she's requesting that he stay away from her residence and the residence of her boyfriend, which is the incident location, 260 Pine Street. If you'd sound from Mrs. Moore, and I'll send a chat with her address.
Yes, ma'am, I'm actually here.
All right, Ms. Moore, you'll need to unmute and start your video. All right, Ms. Moore, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you provide will be the truth to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you agree with the statements made by Prosecutor Allen?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
To be honest, even if he can get out on a signature bond, that'd be completely fine. He does have 2 jobs. You know, he works. We're just not together no more, and just stuff just happens. So I definitely understand, but it's just getting too much, and then he's trying to involve my family. So it really just happened when he started to involve my family. So other than that, I just want no contact with my family. I don't care. I mean, me too, definitely. But even if he can sign himself out and go home today, that's fine. I just don't want him to keep doing this.
And do you know what a signature bond means?
Does that mean he can just sign himself out?
And how would we enforce him staying away from you?
That's a good question.
All right, I'm not looking for an answer then. Thank you.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
McLean, anything to add?
Your Honor, Mr. Usher has lived in Georgia all his life. This is from 2.5 months ago, roughly. It is, his education level is high school education. He is a security guard. And as she said, he works 2 jobs. His address is on Memorial near Grady Hospital. It's not at Pine Street. And so
I'm sorry, what's his address?
it's on Memorial Drive, so it's not near Pine Street or not at Pine Street. I'm not sure how far away it would be, but
I don't think we have, let me check.
right, we need to.
We don't have a current address. What is his current address?
Shall I put that in the chat, Your Honor?
You may.
Okay, I'll do that.
Right,
And
so his address is at Memorial,
Memorial Drive,
and is there an apartment number?
there will be, yes.
Okay, so make sure you provide us with his complete address. And Miss Moore, you need to start your video.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we're going to get Mr. Usher's complete address. If you want to obtain a protective order from Superior Court, you can obtain his address from the Victim Advocate's Office of the Prosecutor's Division. And you can have him served there with a petition for a protective order.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
would need to go to the Family Violence Division. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
And the address will be at Memorial Drive. The apartment number and everything should be provided by the Victim Advocate's Office once they obtain that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to
Your
make sure
Honor.
that you got that.
Excuse me, may I just inquire of Ms. Moore briefly?
Sure.
Ms. Moore, have you had contact from this defendant since this report in October?
Yes, ma'am.
And when did he reach out to your family?
I guess the same time. Everything was, if I don't answer, like those calls that he was calling me, if I don't answer, he's going to reach out to my sister. If I don't answer, he's going to reach out to my cousin. So it's like stuff like that. So.
And when was the last time you received contact unwanted?
I have private calls from the 8th, I want to say.
So January the 8th.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Anything else, Mr. McLean?
We would just request that the bond order contain a specific, no third-party contact, no contact with her boyfriend or her family.
All
He's
right.
also named in the police report.
Understood.
Thank you.
Mr. McLean, anything else?
Nothing further, Your Honor. He did work. He's worked as a security guard, Your Honor, for a good 7 or 8 years. I'd mentioned the time period is a stable job. Thank you.
And if he gets this if this case is on his record, or if the protective order is on his record, he could lose that job. So something to think about. On the stalking family violence, there's going to be a $3,500 bond, $100 bond. On the harassing communications, $3,500. His total bond is $7,000. It's going to be a signature bond through pretrial services level 2. You can sign up for your bond, Mr. Usher, but you are not to you are to report to pretrial services twice a month. You are to have no further contact with Rosalind Moore, her immediate family members, or try to reach her through any third parties, which means that if you try to contact anyone in order to get a message or discuss Rosalind Moore, you will be in violation of your bond order. You are to stay away from wherever she works, where she lives, or where she is physically present. You are to stay 200 yards away from her. That means that's a distance of 2 football field lengths. Do you understand? All right. In the first 3 months, once you are released on your signature bond, you will be equipped with an ankle monitor, and you will pay for those monitoring fees out of your own pocket. And this will be for the first 90 days of your release. If you have no incident, if you do not violate your bond and you have no incident and you're not arrested, then the ankle monitor may be removed after 90 days. No illegal drugs, no alcohol, and no weapons and no firearms. And when I mean no contact with Miss Moore, that means no contact in person, through mail, email, phone, computer devices, and you cannot even discuss her on social media. So if it is ascertained that you've attempted to communicate to her by any other alternative or fraudulent or deceptive means, you could be in violation of this bond, which means that your signature bond will be revoked and amended to either a $7,000 surety bond or a cash bond only. Thank you. Your next court date will be January 28th if you are not equipped with the ankle monitor by then. Thank you.
Next, we have position number 11, Mr. Wilson.
Oh, and the
That'll-
monitoring fees will be the defendant's expense.
Mr. Wilson is my case, Your Honor.
If he doesn't get in. I'm sorry, Mr. McLean, what was that?
Mr. Wilson will be me as well.
Okay. There we go. Thank you. Brian Wilson is accused of 2 counts of simple battery family violence and 1 count of simple assault family violence from December 13th of last year, case number 25 CR 251D. Mr. Wilson, you've been advised of your right to remain silent, and your attorney is Mr. McLean. Any priors, Ms. Jackson?
He has 29 cycles. The last arrest was October the 12th, 2022 in Fulton County for a probation violation. He does appear to be on probation in Fulton County for failure to comply with the register and false imprisonment. That case number is 18 SC 158235. Actually, that's 2 different cases. The second case is 18 SC 158410. The disposition date was May the 28th, 2020, and the term is for 6 years. Those cases appear to run concurrently. In addition to that, he appears to have an open case for aggravated assault. That case number is 24 SC 004326, and he does have prior felony convictions and a sentence. It's one in 2017 for possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. It's an additional one in 2017 out of DeKalb County for a failure to comply with the register. It's one in 2011 for burglary. And he received first offender treatment in 2009 for a charge associated with a CWAC. In that case.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Ms. Allen?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. This is an incident, like you heard, from December the 13th, 2024. At about 10:30 p.m., police were called to 779 Cascade Avenue. There they met with the victim. Her name is Jeneria, Jerneria. Last name is Smith. She reported that actually police met her nearby where she fled. So Olympic Circle nearby the location on foot. She ran away. She called the police. That's where she met police. And she reported that inside the location where she lives with the defendant, he had become angry with her and rushed at her, shoving her down on a bed and then pinning her there. She reported she was unable to get up and she fought him back. She was able to get up eventually. She complained of rib pain to the left side of her body. She also said he grabbed a rubber mallet and raised it up as if to strike her. Police responded to the location with her because her 3-year-old was still at the house. A police report was generated and an investigator responded and reached out to the victim, spoke with her on January the 13th. She corroborated what had happened. She reported that she was unable to get up when he put her on the bed with his body weight because he was holding her down. And he was arrested on that day, the 13th, in possession of a firearm, and he is a felon. So he's got a current open first offender or a first appearance case, in Superior Court for possession of a firearm by a felon as a result of his arrest a few days ago. We did get in touch with the victim in this case. She reports that they are not in a relationship and the child that she has is not his. She reports she hasn't had any contact with him since this incident, but that he has been calling her from the jail. We're asking for a $6,000 surety, no contact with the victim, Mrs. Smith, or her child. I would note that because of his registry requirement, that first offender case in 2009 ended up with a conviction. And he has a requirement to register. He shouldn't be in contact with any young women under the age of 16. This victim has a 3-year-old in her home. We're asking for no contact with Ms. Smith or her child, no drugs, alcohol, or weapons, Your Honor. He does have an open aggravated assault. It's against a different woman, Ashley Todd. That case was placed on judicial hold when he failed to appear. So there's a pending probation revocation in that case, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Or failure to appear, excuse me. Thank you.
Mr. McLean,
I think Ashley Todd is the judge's name.
I beg your pardon?
No, Ashley Todd is the name of the victim in his open aggravated assault. Just a coincidence.
Just a coincidence. I'll be darned. Okay. The clerk has, I sent the clerk that address. The other one.
For whom?
Usher.
Okay. Now, what about Mr. Wilson?
On Mr. Wilson, Your Honor, he's lived in Georgia all his life. He's 35. He has a high school education. He works as a cook, and he has done landscaping for 10 to 15 years. Whenever the cook job, the chef job does not provide enough hours, he makes a living that way. He would ask the court to set as low a bond as possible on this. We did read the police report, and we do understand the arrest history in the open case. But he would court to set the bond as low as possible, including a signature bond, if that is at all possible.
Right. On each count, it's going to be $1,500. That's a total of a $4,500 surety bond. No further contact with Jeneria Smith, and to stay away from 779 Cascade Avenue in Southwest Atlanta. He's to have no contact with any minors under the age 16 and under. He's to, well, unfortunately, he's got his 2 probation holds and 2 FTAs presently holding him at the jail. His next court date is going to be January 28th. No further contact with Jeneria Smith and her immediate family, including her children. And no illegal drugs, no alcohol, and no weapons. Thank you. All right, our Spanish interpreter is present, Ms. Lucia.
Yes.
Does somebody, Mr. McLean, do you need to speak with your client?
No, Your Honor, we are good.
Okay. Ms. Lucia, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I am so sorry. I actually stepped out of jail, so I am in my car, but I am not moving, Your Honor.
Not a problem. Thank you so much. Ms. Lucia, do you solemnly swear and affirm the translation you provide will be a true and accurate interpretation with no changes or embellishments?
I do.
Thank you. We are addressing State versus Juan Sanchez, accused of simple assault and criminal trespass.
Estamos en el caso del Estado, la Fiscalía en contra de Juan Sánchez por el cargo de asalto simple y allanamiento de morada.
His case number is 25 CR 261C, and the incident date is January 13th, 2025.
El número del caso es 25CR00261C y la fecha del incidente es el 13 de enero del 2025.
Mr. Sanchez, you have a right to remain silent. Anything you say about the facts of your case, your statements can and will be used against you.
Señor Sánchez, usted tiene el derecho de permanecer en silencio. Cualquier cosa que usted diga puede y será usada en contra suya.
You have a right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be appointed to represent you.
Tiene usted el derecho a tener un abogado. Si usted no puede costear un abogado, el Estado le da uno a usted.
Ms. Jackson, does he have a record?
He
Le,
has
le
two,
preguntan si es que tiene récord.
he has 2 cycles.
Y la respuesta es que sí, tiene 2 ciclos de arrestos.
The last arrest was May the 5th, 2024 in Fulton County for driving under the influence of alcohol and possession of Schedule II controlled substance and improper erratic lane changes and possession of Schedule III controlled substance.
El 5 de mayo del 2024, un arresto en el condado de Fulton por manejar bajo la influencia del alcohol, por cambio errático de carriles y por posesión de sustancias ilegales, tanto de la parte 2 y parte 3.
That case appeared to be still pending, Your Honor. That case number is 24 SC 005671. It was originally a signature bond, but that case was closed out by pretrial October the 1st, 2024. Nothing in addition.
Parece que ese caso aún está abierto. El número del caso es el 24 SC 05671. Parece que se le dio una fianza con un bajo firma y ese caso fue cerrado por el antejuicio, la oficina de antes del juicio, el octubre 1 del 2024.
Your Honor, that's my case.
Yes, Ms. Allen?
This is an incident at the crossings at Holcomb Bridge apartment complex.
Este es un incidente, la fiscal está hablando ahorita, este es un incidente que sucedió en los departamentos Crossing en Holcomb Bridge.
For the past several months, the defendant, as well as co-defendants he was arrested with, have been squatting there in multiple locations.
Cuando fue arrestada, esta persona, igual que las otras personas que fueron arrestadas, estaban viviendo ahí sin autorización en varias ubicaciones.
On January the 7th, for the second time, this defendant was given a criminal trespass warning by Roswell Police.
El 7 de enero, la policía de Roswell le dio por segunda vez a este individuo un cargo de allanamiento de morada.
He had been occupying Unit 1217 there. The address is 1217 Creekside Way.
Había estado él ocupando el departamento o la unidad 1217. La dirección ahí es 1217 Creekside Way.
He and some co-defendants were discovered there by the tenant who rightfully occupies that location, who made a police report.
Él, igual que las otras personas, fueron encontrados, descubiertos ahí, ocupando esa residencia por la persona que es residente legal de esa ubicación, quien llamó a la policía e hizo un reporte policíaco.
That resident went on a trip. When they returned on January the 13th, the door was ajar to their apartment and the defendant was inside the location again with multiple other people.
Ese residente legal salió de la ciudad en un viaje, regresó el 13 de enero y encontró la puerta de la residencia entreabierta y la abrió y encontró al individuo con otras personas ahí nuevamente.
The victim in this case, besides the complex, his name is Bruno Maya, M-A-I-A.
La víctima en este caso, aparte del complejo de apartamentos, se llama Bruno Maya, M-A-Y-A.
He'd been on a trip and asked someone to check on his apartment. That's when the initial report was made. And then on the 13th, he encountered this gentleman.
Él estaba en un viaje y él había pedido a un vecino que chequee el departamento. Ahí fue cuando fue el primer arresto o el primer citatorio, el primer cargo, perdón. Y cuando él regresa el 13 de enero es el segundo cargo.
Mr. Maya made a 911 call from outside of his apartment after he was approached aggressively by the defendant in front of you. That's the basis of the simple assault.
El señor Maya hizo una llamada a la policía al 911 porque la persona, el acusado enfrente suyo, trató violentamente de agredirlo. Esa es la razón por el cargo de asalto simple.
Mr. Sanchez in front of you had multiple weapons on him. He was accompanied by multiple other people. I spoke with the leasing manager at the location today. She reports that he and his co-defendants had previously been in Unit 1238 and had been criminally trespassed months ago as well.
Hablé con la gerente, la administradora de los departamentos el día de hoy y ella me indica que él, al igual que las otras personas, han estado antes en el departamento 1238 y también han sido, o sea, lo hicieron ilegalmente y han allanado esa morada también.
We spoke with the victim today, Mr. Maya. He reports and corroborates that he did not give this gentleman permission to be in his residence. He does not know him, and he absolutely wants no contact.
Hablé con el señor Maya el día de hoy. Él indica que él no conoce a este individuo y que no quiere absolutamente ningún contacto con él.
We're asking for a $2,000 surety bond, Your Honor, to stay away from the entire complex there. Again, that is the crossings at Holcomb Bridge in Roswell. No contact with Mr. Maya. No drugs, alcohol, or weapons. And we would request a social worker visit, Your Honor.
Estamos pidiendo a su señoría un bono asegurado por $2,000 que no se puede, este individuo no puede regresar al complejo de apartamento Crossings en Holcomb Bridge, ningún contacto con el señor Maya y no drogas, no alcohol ni armas mientras está en fianza.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McLean?
Your Honor, Mr. Sanchez was born in Okeechobee, Florida. So he is from Florida and he's been in Georgia for 10 years, which is a good while. He is 43 years old. He does have that DUI that's open case, and he has an attorney on that. It may be an appointed attorney. I have not contacted that person. He has, for the last 6 years, done stone work, which involves the laying of brick and pavers and stone and tile and that sort of thing. He asked the court to consider a signature bond or the lowest possible bond in this case.
Thank you.
En cuanto al abogado defensor, él indica que el señor Sánchez nació en Okeechobee, la Florida, ha estado 10 años en el estado de Georgia, tiene 43 años de edad, tiene el caso de manejar bajo la influencia de alcohol todavía abierta y hace trabajo durante los últimos 6 años de piedra, ladrillo y están pidiendo para usted una fianza, nada más con firma o una fianza asegurada con dinero lo más baja posible.
On each count is 1,000. His total bond is 2,000 surety. Next court date is January 28th, 2025. No further contact with Bruno Maye, and to stay away from the 1217 Creekside Way, Roswell, Georgia, the entire apartment complex.
Y la juez, el fallo de la juez es un bono de fianza de $1,000 por cada cargo, con un total de $2,000, que se mantenga lejos de el señor Bruno Maya, que se mantenga lejos y no regrese al complejo de apartamentos donde está el 1217 de Creekside Way. Todo el complejo de apartamentos no puede regresar, y también no drogas, ni alcohol, ni armas.
Within 30 days, he must update us with his current mailing address, which cannot be the incident location.
En los próximos 30 días, tiene 30 días para indicar a la corte su nueva dirección, la cual no puede ser en el complejo de apartamentos de este incidente.
Thank you.
Gracias, eso es todo. Your Honor, if that is all my business with the court, may I be excused?
I do believe so. The other two cases, we have Aiden Hatcher and Nako Person. I don't believe they need a Spanish interpreter. Would that be correct? Yeah. All right, Ms. Lucia. Thank you so much. You have a good afternoon.
You too, Your Honor.
Deputy, do we have a Nako Person there?
Yes, we have him right here. He's sitting there, position number 8.
All right, thank you. Mr. Person is accused of criminal trespass causing damage to property from November 1st of 2024, case number 25 CR 259F. Mr. Person, you've been advised of your right to remain silent, and your attorney is going to be Mr. McLean. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Any priors on Mr. Hatcher? Excuse me, Mr. Person?
He has 29 cycles. The last arrest was June the 10th, 2024 in DeKalb County for criminal trespassing. That charge was null pros on August the 5th, 2024. He does appear to be on probation in Fulton County. That case number is 17 SC 155770. That disposition date was July the 31st, 2018, and the term is for 9 years. He does have prior misdemeanor sentence and convictions. He received a nolo contendere sentence in 2023 out of DeKalb County for obstruction of an officer. Sworn in 2019 for criminal trespassing. One in 2018 for obstruction of an officer. One in 2017 for simple battery. One in 2016 for disorderly conduct. One in 2000, he received a nolo contendere sentence in 2011 for theft by taking. He does appear to meet the criteria for UJRA level 3. Nothing in addition.
Thank you. Ms. Allen?
Thank you, Your Honor. Some chronology here just to start us off. You just heard from pretrial. The defendant was arrested in December for criminal damage to property in the second degree. It appears that because of a failure of a law enforcement officer to come to the preliminary hearing, that case was dismissed, but it will be a direct indictment with the DA's office. That case, the criminal damage to property in the second degree, is actually against the same victim here. The incident date is November the 19th, I believe, in that case. In front of you today is an incident from November the 1st. The victim in this case, Mr. Sedmak, he's here on our Zoom. He has obtained a protective order through Superior Court, and the protective order, as well as its petition, details incidences starting the 31st of October. He had an ex parte issued December the 22nd after the incident. That's in Superior Court, and I believe that was served. And the final order was issued on the 20th of December, Your Honor. So on the 1st of November at about 7 p.m., police were called one of multiple times to the Campbellton Road Southwest address where this gentleman lives. He reported that the defendant in front of you, who he knows, who is in the neighborhood often and he is aware of and recognizes, had in front of him damaged his mailbox and then walked away. That he'd been arrested previously for damage at the same location for his door. He was able to identify the defendant for police, and they obtained a warrant. It looks like just on the 14th, on yesterday. So the defendant is still being supervised on that 2017 Superior Court case. Those are aggravated assaults on law enforcement officers, 17 SC 15570. Between 2017 and now, he has numerous simple batteries, obstructions, simple battery on law enforcement officers, and criminal trespass convictions. We're asking for a $2,000 surety bond, Your Honor, a mental health evaluation in order to stay away from the location and have no contact with Mr. Sedmak. His first name is Paul. And no drugs, alcohol, or weapons. There's a concern that this behavior is escalating. We've spoken to Mr. Sedmak today. He reported that he is in fear for his safety and the safety of his family. He does not know this gentleman, but he says that he's been terrorizing his home for about a year. He comes onto the property, he climbs over the fence, he leaves trash in his yard, he damages his front door, and he's even entered his home. And that is going to be a case that's directly indicted by the DA's office, Your Honor. If you'll call for Mr. Sedmak, thank you.
Paul Stedmuck, if you are on Zoom, you can unmute and start your video. Mr. Stedmuck, please unmute. Please unmute. No, you still need to unmute. It's a little, there we go.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, please raise
I'm
your
sorry.
right hand. Do you solemnly swear and affirm the testimony you provide will be the truth to the best of your knowledge?
I do, Your Honor.
All right. Do you agree with the statements made by Prosecutor Allen?
I do.
All right. Do you have anything else to add?
Yes, Your Honor. I would request that he receives no bond because of the violence that he has portrayed, and it just continues to escalate. And I truly am in fear for my family's safety because the man will not stay away from our property. And I'm afraid if he gets out, he'll be back. And I just request, I do not know this man. I feel like we're targeted by him. And I truly fear for my family's safety. That's why I'm asking if you could please provide no bond to this person.
All right. Thank you. Please mute your screen. Mr. McLean?
And Your Honor, just briefly, the address is specifically 1262 Campbellton Road Southwest. I apologize.
I've got that. Thank you. Mr. McLean?
Your Honor, Mr. Person asked for the court to set the bond as low as possible on this. He is, let's see, date of birth. He's 45 years old, and he does have the arrest record that was read out, but he does have a court date coming up, and he does ask the court to consider a signature bond or as low a bond as would be possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sedmak, in addition to this criminal case, you can also file a petition for a protective order with the Superior Court of Fulton County.
He's already got one, Your Honor. There's already one in place.
All right. But it has no effect until it's legally served upon Mr. Person. So it needs to be served upon Mr. Person if he's still at the jail. I'm sorry, it's not Mr. Person, it's Mr. Hatcher. It needs to be served on Mr. Hatcher
No,
while
it's
he's-
Mr. Person, Your Honor, you're correct.
Okay, oh, I'm getting my 2 pages confused, sorry. Narco person, all right. Meanwhile, on the criminal trespass causing damage to property, Mr. Sedmak, I do understand your concern. However, this is a misdemeanor case, and by law, a defendant is entitled to a bond unless there are extraordinary circumstances that require no bond to be issued. Under the present situation, I do not see the extraordinary circumstances. On the criminal trespass causing damage to property, his bond is going to be set at 2,500. It is a surety bond. And his next court date is going to be January 28th. He's to stay 500 yards away from 1262 Campbellton Road in Atlanta, Georgia. He's to stay 500 yards away from Paul Stedmark and Mr. Stedmark's immediate family members. He's not to communicate with them in person, through mail, email, computer devices, and even through social media. No illegal drugs, no alcohol, and no weapons and no firearms. Mr. Person also has a open felony case, 24 PI 008548, and I'm not sure what's the status, whether he's got a probation hearing on that matter. I thought I saw one, but
He was arrested, and that was the case I said, the court dismissed when the officer didn't come to the preliminary hearing, but it is against the same victim for felony level damage. And the DA's office is going to be submitting a direct indictment, I believe, Your Honor.
okay. But in the meantime, we will see Mr. Person in court on January 28th unless he bonds out, and he'll need to comply with the conditions. Did he have any holds from the cab?
There were none listed in the GCIC, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. Then that concludes the case. Thank you.
Next we have position number 4, Mr. Hatcher.
All right, is that the breakout?
Yes.
All right, let's see, Miss Grace, we can remove all, we can stop the live stream.
Okay, Judge.
All right, we can remove, there's someone called Blessed, Chris Hatcher, Diana Hatcher. Are they involved in this case?
Yes, Your Honor, the Hatchers are Mr. Hatcher's parents,
All
I
right.
believe.
No, and blessed is me. I'm Miss Griggs. I wasn't able to unmute quick enough. I was the second plaintiff on this case, and I just held on because I put a note in the system. I haven't seen that the victim's advocate has responded just yet, but I couldn't get off mute quick enough. Gregory Griggs is a truck driver. I'm the
Please
one.
start your video.
Yes, sure. Let me see how to do that. I'm sorry, 1 second.
All right.
Here I am. I am
Oh,
trying.
we have no idea. We can see a steering wheel.
Hang on, I'm trying. Give me 1 second. It's not. How do I switch it back to me? Here we are. I'm driving my daughter.
Who are you here for?
I am Karika Smith Griggs. I am there for Gregory Griggs.
All right, Mr. Griggs received a $4,500 signature bond through pretrial. He's required to have no contact with you. And he's allowed to have a third-party transfer of the child, which means that a third party must be involved. And he's got a couple of programs he has to attend. And he's to stay away from the Abbott's, no, excuse me, he's to stay away from your home in Peachtree Corners. Anything else you want to know about?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that he is an over-the-road truck driver. And I believe you stated that he would have to do weekly classes. With those classes?
Twice a month. Yeah, those are domestic violence classes, and those can be done online.
Perfect. That's exactly what I needed to know. Thank you so much. I didn't want to interfere with his job and income where he had to report back to Georgia weekly for classes.
He has to report twice a month in person to pretrial services. So he'll need to make sure he makes those accommodations.
Okay, I was just wondering if there was a way that can also be virtual so he can continue working.
No.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. This young lady has
No,
communicated with
that's
our
all I'm gonna
office.
say about the case now. He's not present, and that's all I can say right now.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Okay, Miss Grace, we can remove Blessed from the Zoom as well.
Okay, I'll remove myself.
Thank you. All right, Chris Hatcher and Diana Hatcher, please start your video.